So now we are official. So I welcome to you once more to the new year. Love and light to all of you. And the fifth encounter in arts and medicine here at the Berlin University of the Arts. In this public lecture series, which is indeed very public today because there's a lot of non-students here today, the healing arts. And I'm overly thrilled to introduce tonight's speakers to you. That's firstly Professor Dr. Anne Berghöfer, who studied medicine in Berlin and followed by a residency in psychiatry. Since 2001, you are senior scientist at the Institute of Social Medicine, Epidemiology and Health Economics at the Charité, and you were appointed associate professor in 2022. Anne's scientific focus is on health services research in psychiatric disorders, innovative mental health care models, health care in rural regions, and for disadvantaged population groups. We know each other because we are both, you're the coordinator, first of all, of the Charité Network Arts and Medicine, but we are both co-founding members or board members of the International Society for Arts and Medicine, which was inaugurated or started by Professor Willich, who's also here today, at the Charité. So I'm very thrilled that you are. I'll first introduce Prem, and then you can come to the stage. I'm very thrilled that you are with us today, and I'm also excited about today's talk, which will offer us also a bit of a historic perspective of the relationship between art and psychiatry. And now I'm coming to you, Prem Krishnamurthy. He's a designer, author, and educator, and won a lot of prizes. You explore the role of art as an agent of transformation on various levels, individual, collective, and structural. Curated amazing exhibitions like the Front International in 2022, Oh Gods of Dust and Rainbows, which was about really art, as an agent of transformation, but also as a mode of healing and as a therapeutic process. So it's right on topic. You publish, you also direct various practices such as the workshops, the multidisciplinary design studio, working with museums, art organizations, not-for-profits and other clients, and the Department of Transformation, which is a 4-month library residency at Canal Projects in New York. But we have a funny story because I think we met because I approached you a couple of years ago, I think just because you had so many similar friends or common friends, and eventually met during the pandemic online, and you invited me to a course you were teaching, I'm not sure if I'm right, but maybe in Düsseldorf, on EDMR practices and reading. And then we kind of connected further, and then my whole kind of exploration, investigation of the relationship between arts and medicine started by organizing 2 internal workshops at the Hospital Havelhöhe, near Spandau in Berlin, where I did internal workshop with the members of the board of the hospital, with various cultural practitioners. And there you, Prem, gave a very inspiring talk, which was kind of a first tryout, I think, also of your performative lectures, or lecture series you did for the Front International eventually exhibition. So anyways, I'm super thrilled that you're here, that you stayed longer in Berlin to make this happen, and that you brought all your friends. Woo! That said, please a warm applause to both of them. And we will start with you, Anne. I'll open the file for you. Hopefully. Which one? No, this is Prem, and this one is the right one. Yeah, it's all good. And we start here, and we give, clapping is always good, another warm applause for Anne Berghöfer.
Everybody? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, thank you, Lucas, for introducing me. I shouldn't speak so loud, huh? No, that's okay. It's fine, yeah? I would like to shed some light on how art came into psychiatry and to what extent psychiatry needs art. And to do this, I will look at psychiatry from a certain distance and also dive into history of psychiatry a little bit. This should make clear why art therapy has a very important role to play in psychiatry. Since my following lecturers, Friedemann Schad and Adak Pimoradi, in the next weeks, in the next Mondays, are actively practicing art therapy in their clinical work, I will leave it to them to show clinical examples and go into the practical application of art. So, well, in the past, the mentally ill were either cared for in the family or, if they were disruptive or dangerous or aggressive, in prison. It was not until around 1800, after the French Revolution, that psychiatric institutions and psychiatry as a separate discipline began to develop. One of the driving forces behind this was the French psychiatrist Philippe Pinel, here in the middle of this painting. The painting from that time shows the legendary scene of the liberation of the mentally ill from their chains in prison, Pinel ordering to remove the chains. In the 19th century, following this time, a large number of psychiatric institutions were built, and towards the end, as a result of industrialization, urbanization, and of course further development of the psychiatric profession, there was an institutional boom. These institutions were typically built outside the cities, huge, as you can see here, a picture, a drawing from Leipzig, the institution in Leipzig. Outside the cities, huge, to say quasi-cities in themselves, self-sufficient with agriculture, workplaces, the staff living there, with no contact to somatic medicine and also no contact to society. Although the idea that mental illness could be cured was there, the resources were very limited, having no medication, for example. Ultimately, this resulted in huge institutions with no separation between mentally disabled people and those suffering from progressive diseases such as dementia, or suffering from diseases that are indeed curable, like depression. These two pictures show one of the largest asylums of all. It's Bedburg-Hau on the Lower Rhine, located with more than 3,000 beds. All of these institutions were involved in the murder of the mentally ill during the National Socialism. And these institutions were, in fact, in operation until the 70s and 80s of the 20th century. And only from the 50s onwards, there were psychopharmacology, psychotropic drugs, and the options to treat mentally ill patients. However, a fundamental restructuring of psychiatric care after the National Socialism was not undertaken in Germany, in contrast to many other countries like the United States, England, Scandinavia, and so on. So, in this respect, art and creativity didn't play a therapeutic role. However, around the turn of the century, in 1900, psychiatrists of that time discovered creative works in severely mentally ill patients for the first time, and particularly in patients with chronic psychosis and schizophrenia who could not be cured at that time. And from that, in the years that followed, a therapeutic interest in these artistic messages, expressions of the patients emerged, and the attitude towards chronic mentally ill patients started to change. And the psychiatrist Hans Prinzhorn started to systematically collect these works and compiled a collection with around 5,000 works around 1920. And today, just to show you some pictures, the Prinzhorn collection in Heidelberg comprises around 40,000 objects, which are shown in changing exhibitions, including a graphic cabinet here at the right side, which is available for research purposes and where you can apply to get access. The idea and possibility of using these forms of patient expression was only taken by psychoanalysis in the 20th century. C.G. Jung, we say, a student of Sigmund Freud, integrated creative therapies into analytical psychotherapy as a fundamental concept. But this was the only concept which integrated art. I think the decisive change in psychiatry came with the psychiatry inquiry, or we say Psychiatrie-Enquete in Germany. Between 1971 and 1975, a commission of experts from the German Bundestag examined the state of psychiatry and developed a comprehensive reform. And this reform package included several major points. First of all, the dehospitalization of the patients, which were up to then kept in the institutions, and now they should be integrated into society. The institutions were to be dissolved, and general hospitals were to be given psychiatric wards instead in the community, in the cities. The catchment areas and also the size of the wards were drastically reduced from 3,000, for example, to 200 or 400 at maximum. In return, outpatient care was developed close to home with psychiatric specialists in the outpatient sector, social workers, residential communities, and much more. And as a result, concepts like social psychiatry and community psychiatry developed, and also psychotherapy was able to take up a substantial amount of space in routine care in psychiatry. And this should be linked, and indeed is, to a complete change in the perspective on the mentally ill and the therapy concepts. To quote a fellow campaigner for the reform, Günther Wienberg, he said, the change includes respect for the individuality, experience and needs, possibilities and limitations of the individual patient, attentive interest in the person, in the life story, life situation, wishes and goals of the individual patient, empathetic understanding, the attempt to think oneself into the subjective world of the individual patient, and meeting at eye level and equitable interaction. So the process indeed is ongoing today. From the 80s onwards, biological psychiatry gained strength and sought to apply somatic methods and concepts into psychiatry. Imaging techniques such as computer tomography, magnetic resonance tomography, and something like that, and of course genetics, were to predict therapy response and to optimize the treatment in psychiatry. Special procedures were developed, such as magnetic stimulation in chronic ill patients, electroconvulsive therapy, for example, to overcome chronicity and therapy resistance. Despite all this, it has to be said that psychiatry has stagnated for many years until today. And just to sum up the situation today, more than a quarter of Germans suffer actually from some kind of mental disorder. The most common: anxiety, depression, disorders caused by some kind of addiction, alcohol or other addictive substances, despite a wide range of treatment options, medication, psychotherapy. Only a quarter of those affected receives treatment in line with the guidelines and based on scientific evidence, and a quarter remains chronically ill. 18% of sick leave days today are due to mental disorders. Why am I talking about stagnation? And I'm not alone in this. We still don't have a diagnostic classification that differentiates between the many different causes of in symptom constellations in psychiatric illness. For example, the diagnosis depression is just a big stew. The hope that biological markers, genetics, imaging procedures, and so on, will sort that out has not been fulfilled. For 20 to 30 years, no drugs have been developed that are more effective, really more effective, than those that have been around for a long time. The gold rush of psychopharmacology is over. Even the development of increasingly complex and specific psychotherapeutic methods has not had a resounding effect. And that's why I want to jump over to art therapy now. Art therapy is already used in many different areas: psychiatry, psychosomatics, psychotherapy, but also in rehabilitation, in neurologic rehabilitation, elderly care, retirement, and nursing homes. And there is growing relevance in pedagogics, such as schools, for example, or children daycare. Art therapy is, of course, or encompasses a variety of different activities. Just to give a brief overview in this picture: music therapy, for example, and music-based interventions. Then visual arts with painting, plastination, designing, or photography. And then performing arts, dancing. The hospital clowns, for example, belonging in this area. Theater making. And then literature, bibliotherapy, poetry therapy, and creative writing are common. And architecture, the healing aspects of architecture, but also concepts like snoezelen, which comes from the Netherlands in psychiatry, and art on prescription. And the aims of art therapy today are to discover the potential and the resources of the individual patient, being able or enabling the patient to express inner concerns and discover new perspectives and possibilities. And the professional concept today includes a targeted support in the creative process, a guarantee of a protecting setting, a sheltered environment, development of the joy of experimentation, and reflection of the process of creation together with a therapist. And what is important, the process of creative work is in the foreground and not the work itself. The work itself does not need publicity. So, but what exactly is the healing aspect of art therapy? A group from Sweden around Christina Blomdahl analyzed in a review, looking through many different study results and study publications, the healing factors of art therapy, and found these 8 items: self-exploration, self-expression, understanding and explanation, feelings, inner concerns, creativity, symbolic thinking, communication with therapist, with a group, with other patients, with family. Sensory stimulation, of course, using the hands, the body, and integration. And if you look at the patient's perspective, another group from England examined the patient perspective also using a review, looking through many different publications and studies, and found also major items of what patients found being the healing factors. It's understanding of self, freedom of expression in this situation where they are creative, the sense of personal achievement, giving perspective on feelings, raising self-esteem, provision of strength, and sense of empowerment, and of course establishing relationships to the therapeutic team or other patients in the group. I come back to the stagnation in psychiatry. Psychiatry, up to now, to my opinion, has failed to adopt a holistic approach in principle and throughout. There is a lack of mandatory integration of salutogenetic aspects and concepts. There's a lack of provision of alternative means of communication, always then when language is failing, when language expressing oneself in words is not possible, as it is necessary in psychotherapy. There is a strong path dependency and a great belief in progress in psychiatry, but in the sense of the one game changer that will hopefully come. To my opinion, it will not come, especially not for the many mentally ill people who are suffering from their environment, social changes, stress or unfulfilled wishes in their jobs, in their relationship, loneliness in the city, and many other problems. With these factors shown here, art therapy has enormous potential to be a real added value for mentally ill people. And therefore, let me close with a rough agenda. Art therapy can help overcome these deficits if it becomes an integral part of psychiatric care. It includes salutogenetic aspects and therefore completes a holistic approach in psychiatry. Art therapy completes an integrated approach in the sense of cross-sectoral, that means interprofessional, psychiatric, social, psychological disciplines. And it completes an integrative medical approach in the sense of medication plus non-verbal creative therapy plus verbal, using language, psychotherapy, each to the best of the individualized therapy to the individual needs of the patients. So this is my final slide, and I hope that we can discuss this further after the talks, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Anne. Wonderful, thank you so much. And we jump directly to you, Prem, now, and then we enter into the conversation. So. Yeah, but that said, thank you for providing us with such a historical overview into this topic, which is, I think, a perfect grounding, a base also then to kind of further explore now with you, Prem.
Well, while we're getting set up, I'll just encourage you to stand up.
Is this the answer slide?
And I tend to do something before I start and talk for a minute. And so,
Prem, you can take the mic if you want.
Oh, yeah.
All it is just a moment after saying, let's give another round of applause for Dr. Berghöfer. Amazing to have that start. And Thank you, Lucas, and everybody, and Jakob for making this possible. But I just want to encourage you to take a moment and just shake things out. Some of you might know something called schütteln. Does anybody know what schütteln is? Yeah, just like make some noises if you like. You can pick your shoulders up. The point is just get yourself moving. You can bounce on your feet if it's helpful. Shake things around. Move your shoulders a bit. The shoulders are always really tense. And then just invite you to take a moment and come to a pause. Invite you to close your eyes if that's accessible for you, and just take 3 long breaths and let yourself arrive. Cool. Oh yeah, great. Okay. Aber ich will das nicht, alle meine Infos sind unten links. Dann kann man das nicht lesen. Kann ich hier?
If it's not blinding you, nobody can see you on camera.
That's part of the deal.
Okay. I don't have to be on camera. Who needs to see me? You can hear my voice. Okay, let's jump right in. So, somewhere around March or April 2020, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, I was reading a copy of Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a best-selling New York Times book on different modes of therapy and how they land in the body. I came across this chapter on EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. Is anyone here familiar with that? See like a handful of people. I have to keep moving out of the light so I'm not blinded. So just briefly, EMDR, which is a therapeutic modality developed in the 1980s, involves having the patient talk about a challenging traumatic experience for people with complex PTSD. And while they're speaking about it, the clinician moves their finger left and right, something like this. Just try it. Pick up your finger and go like this. Was? Das ist too fast? Okay, let's do it slower. But the point is that through the bilateral stimulation that happens, there's a lot of theories about this. Some people do it with tapping on the shoulders. There's lots of different ways. But that particular eye movement seems to loosen up the traumatic memories which have stuck and allow the patient to reintegrate them. At the same time as I was reading this book, I was reading a lot of other books. I don't know, I tend to have about 5 or 10 books on my shelf or on my bedside at any time. And so I was reading a book on narrative theory, Jane Allison's Meander, Spiral, Explode. And I came across this line that was very striking. She says, narratologists call it movement on the discourse or textual level. Discourse comes from discuro, to run back and forth. Think of your eyes reading lines on this page. And I read that and it was something like, I got this tingle, got these goosebumps, and I thought, well, it's obvious, but what if there's a connection between EMDR, between the eye movement that happens here and that's been shown to be very effective for some people in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, and the simple act of reading itself? So when I had a guest professorship in Düsseldorf, I had the opportunity to create an experimental seminar called Reading as Healing. And in this seminar, I invited different EMDR therapists and trainers, as well as typographers. And the students created experimental, exploratory projects to look at potential connections between reading and therapy. And this is where Lucas actually came to my online seminar. And one of the things that came out of it was a project by a student named Miri Falkus. She made a little book called Feels Like Typotherapy to Me. I thought the idea of typotherapy was particularly interesting, and so in a retreat setting with some colleagues, I just prototyped a small therapeutic session where I asked each of the people to write down a challenging experience. Nothing too traumatic, I'm not a therapist, I didn't, but something a little challenging, and to rate the strength of the emotion. Then, after writing that text, they took the text and designed it. They went into Google Slides or PowerPoint or whatever was available to them and had a way to change the typeface, the size, the position. I had the hypothesis that it would give people a sense of agency over their own language and their own narrative. And it was a very small sample, but at the end, people did rate that the negative emotion was less powerful than it was at the beginning. After doing this, I realized sometimes you have to do things in the world to realize how they land in your own life. I realized that actually this very exercise is something that I myself had been doing through the writing of a book, an experimental digital book called P!DF, which I published and was republished periodically from 2017 to 2021. There was a section of the book in the first release of it about failure, which I cut from later editions because it was simply a little too fraught for me. It was the first time I'd ever written about something that I'd been dealing with privately in therapy for several years then, which was Air India Flight 182, a flight that was bombed, that was blown up in a terrorist bombing in 1985 that took a large chunk of my dad's family. So I found that by writing this and designing this book, it did have something. It made me more able to deal with this. And I realized that that's what this class, this seminar was trying to do in this workshop. But I do think that this is maybe how people often think art can heal. And Anna Berghöfer so eloquently and with a great umfang kind of gave us a sense of the way that art therapy works. But my sense is that typically art therapy, or even this kind of typotherapy that I thought could be interesting, it's really about healing the individual. It's about the individual working through their problems in a way, and that is powerful. But my thesis, if I have a thesis, is that art can be transformative at scale. The thing that's interesting to me about art is that I believe it has the potential to be transformative and healing not only for individuals, but also for collectives and for the structures of society as a whole. From 2018 until 2022, a lot of my energy went into artistic directing and curating Front International 2022. This was a massive 3-city, 30-venue, 100-artist triennial. It takes place every 3 years in Cleveland, Akron, and Oberlin, Ohio. I'm going to give a shout out to Asad Raza back there, who, let's have a shout out for Asad Raza. Who was an artist in the show and is the curator, artistic director of the next edition. So please put in July 2025 in your calendar, come to Cleveland. But this exhibition, which we announced the title and theme of it in January 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And the title of it was, "Oh Gods of Dust and Rainbows." It focused on art as an agent of transformation, a mode of healing, and a therapeutic process. The title came from a poem by Langston Hughes, who is an African-American poet, artist, playwright, and more, who spent his teenage years in Cleveland. He wrote this powerful poem, which became our starting point. It goes like this. You can read it to yourself or aloud with me. "Oh, God of dust and rainbows, help us see that without the rainbow, without dust, the rainbow would not be." The second part is, "I look with awe upon the human race and God, who sometimes spits right in its face." This poem, with its invocation of suffering and joy and how they're interlinked, became a real kind of mantra for us. And I'm lucky that this exhibition, though it was extremely challenging to make over this period of time during a pandemic, it gave me a chance to think through how art can be transformative at different scales. Charles and Ray Eames made a diagram called What is Design? And I've taken the liberty to redraw that diagram and call it What is Art? What it shows in their original diagram and in this redrawing is the way in which art is never a single concern. It's never about just the individual's desires. As they wrote here, there's one section that is the concerns of the artist or maker. Then the second is the area of genuine interest to the community or commissioner. And the third are the concerns of the planet as a whole. And so art that is truly meaningful, perhaps that is transformative, is in this intersection. During the pandemic, I was also reading Adrienne Maree Brown, the writer, organizer, doula, and more. Her emergent strategy has resonated with a lot of global movements for liberation and racial equity. In her book, Emergent Strategy, she says, in the framework of emergence, the whole is a mirror of the parts. Existence is fractal. The health of the cell is the health of the species and the planet. So this became a kind of a guiding point for thinking through how art could be transformative at different scales. At the individual scale, I like to think a lot about daily practice. I mean, again, with a show of hands, how many people here have some sort of daily or periodic creative practice or ritual that you do? I see more than half the room raising your hands. And I think that this is a very important and basic way in which we know that art or writing or singing or doing any of these creative things that leaves a mark can also transform ourselves. But the second level that I think that art can be transformative at is the collective. And this is what I think of as sharing joy. This is something I learned from Audre Lorde, the late great poet and activist. In her essay, The Uses of the Erotic as Power, she writes about how the sharing of joy between people who are different can help lessen the threat of their difference. And this is something I think art can do, whether it's through color, whether it's through song, whether it's through form, whether it's through rhythm. It can bring people who are dissimilar together. I want to ask again, how many of you, when you were children, sang with other people? How many of you have sung with other people? How many people, but now I want to ask, how many people here have sung with other people this week, in the last 7 days? Some, that's great, that's wonderful. I mean, I have a personal, I'm actually encouraged to see that. There's a statistic that in the US, 1 out of 5 people in the US has a family member in a choir. But I have a gut sense that if you sing with somebody, you're less likely to shoot them. The third level at which I think art can be transformative is at the level of the structure. And this is, art has sat at the same table with those in power for a very long time. People who have political, spiritual, economic power. And I think through this proximity, art can begin to offer different ways to act in the world, different ways to be in the world. We see this in science fiction, but we also see this in so many other practices. So I'm just going to show a couple of examples from front that speak to these. The first is Paul O'Keefe, who is an artist based in Cleveland. And he made a series of work for our triennial that was distributed throughout all of the cities of the triennial. And it was a very powerful work called In Memoriam. It came out of an extremely tragic, traumatic experience. His 20-year-old son killed himself. And after that, he worked with his son's poetry to make a set of sculptures that took his son's unpublished poems and transformed them. On the collective level, the artist Abigail DeVille worked within the Fairfax neighborhood, a predominantly African-American neighborhood where Langston Hughes spent his teenage years. She worked with elders there to create masks and to create an entire installation called The Dream Keepers in a public park. One of the most profound experiences I would have would be to visit that place, see people who knew nothing about our triennial looking at the art and engaging with it. Because people think art is only for people in museums, but everybody can relate to it in some way if you make it accessible. And the third level is an installation that the Swedish architecture trio Dansbana made in downtown Akron. They work with communities, particularly of teenage girls, to create Bluetooth-powered open access dance floors that anybody can jump onto from a mobile device and play their own music. Now, a week before Front opened in July 2022, Jayland Walker, who was a 26-year-old unarmed black man, was shot by the Akron police 46 times while he was running from them. 46 times. And in the wake of that, during our show opening, Akron was completely in lockdown. You could not have protests. There was a curfew imposed. So everything was shut down. But this was an art installation. And so people could get on Bluetooth and play their music because it's art, not protest. Okay, I'm going to move up to the present, and I'm looking at time as well. So many of these ideas, let me take a deep breath again. Okay. So many of these ideas from this show and from my own decades of working as a designer and teacher have filtered into what I call Department of Transformation, a group that thinks about and practices how art can be transformative. This here, a website by Benna and Stella here in the audience. Let's have a quick round of applause for these guys who made Menschmaschine, who have done beautiful graphic design for the Department of Transformation, and allowed us to visualize the fluid, dynamic, interconnected aspect of the work. And the work is unfolding right now. It started with a teaching tour across the US that passed through 19 states of the US, but it also happens in one-on-one conversations with people. It happens in workshops and gatherings. It happens in things like reading groups and structured formats for thinking together. It also happens through cooking, but really it's about bringing people together in different forms. I like to think about bumpiness, the way in which so many of our formats have become smooth. They're made for easy consumption. But I think what art can do is to create a little friction. It can create ways of working that are unexpected and break you out of the normative, that can bring you back into your body, bring you back into paying attention. And so the thing I really believe in, above all, is karaoke. I mean, so how many people here hate karaoke? How many people hate karaoke? Yeah, okay, good. We got some hands. I mean, good. Well, I think the misconception in my mind, I used to hate karaoke too. The reason why I think a lot of people hate, there are some people who love it, but I used to hate it too because I think people think to do karaoke well, you have to be on a mic singing. Whereas actually, I think everybody in the room is important. All the people who are clapping, all the people who are sitting quietly in the corner, all of you are just as important to karaoke because without you, there is no karaoke. And that is what I think is important. We've lost these modes for being together, singing together, being vulnerable. And I want to encourage us to think about art and karaoke as a mode for that. You'll see that there are cards and pens that have been passed out by Lucas. And if you like, if a song comes to you that you'd like to hear sung, not a song that you want to sing, but a song you might like somebody else to hear, to sing, just write it down and give it to us. I'll end here, finally, with one quote from Bessel van der Kolk again. Seeing novel connections is the cardinal feature of creativity. As we've seen, it's also essential to healing. So, thank you very much. If you'd like to find more information about Department of Transformation, you can, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So, are we still on? Yeah. Anne, please come as well. No, actually, it's good. No, with the mic, it's easy like this. So I think we can give another applause here. This is nice. Thank you. Thanks to both of you. And thank you for you, Anne, for kind of really opening up the historical scale, and for you, Prem, to offering like very concrete and embodied examples, kind of application in the practice, in the artistic practice. Is the mic still loud enough? Yeah. So as I said before, I'll just break the ice. No, I'll start the conversation. That is also a question of kind of how you want to react to one another, and that's really then it's the open conversation that we can have with all of you. And maybe at some point, maybe I could ask you, Rebecca, that like in maybe 20 minutes or so, you go around and you collect those cards. Yes?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So maybe we start by something that's kind of obvious to me, but maybe not obvious to everyone. That's how we started this kind of very series here. And how I personally got interested into the topic was a report by the World Health Organization in 2019 on the kind of healing effect of the arts in the medical discourse. So the World Health Organization came to realization that both the passive perception, consumption or whatever of art, meaning reading a book, going to a concert, going to a museum, listening to a symphony, as well as the active production of it, has an enormous effect on the well-being of individuals, and in particular for any type of chronic illness. Obviously not heavy, like if you break your leg, this will not do anything, but let's say any kind of chronic physiological as well as psychological illness cannot be treated, but at least it has a positive effect on it. So this is kind of the summa summarum of this report. Very simply saying, art heals, and that from such an institution that is maybe not known for being extremely exploratory or experimental in their definitions of things, I thought was quite promising. And honestly speaking, as someone involved in the cultural realm, I felt like something that I felt all along to be true, kind of in a quote-unquote proven, and gave our practice much more sense. And this is also what I realized in the residence of the students to this program that we're offering here. Now, you both spoke about the healing power of art, and also art as a mode of healing for both the maker as well as the receiver. And I have a medical doctor and have a designer and curator next to me. Or yeah, I'd like to come to this notion of curation, because curation is curare, is kind of caring for, no? To cure and to care. And maybe if both of you could share with us your kind of personal definitions of what that care or curing in your practices means. We have to share a mic, Prem, but you have your own.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because then you can go first.
I can go first. So I think I would differentiate between curing and healing. I think curing and the curator is something of, it has a function of transmitting or coaching a process of finally healing. And that's what I think happens from my perspective now in psychiatry, in art therapy with chronic mentally ill patients. An art therapist is some kind of curator of a process and an understanding process of the internal, difficult to formulate feelings, emotions, wishes, perspectives of a patient. And what finally comes up is some kind of healing result perspective. But the therapist is, I would say, the curator. This is a fantastic word for this.
Well, I mean, and then it sounds like you're putting then the patient is the artist.
The patient is the artist, of
And
course.
so the healing itself in that metaphor becomes the art.
The art, is the expression of the healing process or the final result. Yeah.
But unfortunately, we have to share the mic.
Yeah.
For our online audience to kind of. I'll ask you again. But now, what's your take? Because you are in between. You're an artistic curator, basically. But and you devoted an entire triennial on these notions of caring and curing. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what you already started in your short presentation.
Well, I do believe that there's a strong relationship between between curating and therapeutic practice. Of course, even within the medical field and outside within the art field, that when you're working with artists, you are trying to find a way to help them to find where they need to go and what they need to do. Ultimately, it's a process that they themselves will find. Much as you say, I think healing, in my understanding, is a process that the individual themselves has to do. Your body, your mind needs to heal itself. It can't be done from the outside. That being said, I do think that, art therapy, as you say rightfully, it is, as I understand it, focused on the process, not on the product. But that is maybe where I have a different perspective, because I am interested in the process, the way that a daily practice can transform a person, but I'm also interested, and all of those things are artworks, but there are artworks that can speak to other people as well. And so I'm interested in how art can play both that individual interior process-based way, kind of mode, and can also, in some cases, though not necessarily in all cases, speak to other people and help to instigate a process of healing in whatever way for them.
Yeah, and maybe we can pick up on this directly, because you brought this very beautiful kind of notion of scale in the potential of healing. You just started the individual, the collective, and the structural. And that's so deep that we can spend some more time and also maybe reflect on your side how this is applicable in your experience of the medical practice. The scalability from the individual, where it's more about the process rather than the outcome, but also the collective, what it actually can make with others, and how, and this comes to your point of, well, we're kind of stagnating right now in psychiatry, where this can even lead potentially to a structural change. No? Do you want to react to that?
I have no idea at the moment
So
what to.
the mic, yeah.
I have to think about it a little bit. The scaling process. Yeah. Wait.
But I understood that you're also working so closely in public health.
Yes.
So that is, and by saying that it's stagnating, you opened up a great question, which is, to ask directly, and how, if you could see that structure changing, if you could see ways that the psychiatric field could move differently. You mentioned art therapy as a way, but even as we discussed a little bit before, the questions of how to make that possible within the German medical system or any medical system become important. So I'm wondering, what are like your first creative impulses towards changing that system?
Well, I think the point is that there is some kind of it's always difficult in the German health system to have any innovations which are that are disruptive, and scaling up might not a problem if the innovation is not so disruptive. So everybody is, it's easy if you have a new antidepressant, for example, which is not so different to the others we have since 20 or 30 years. It's very easy to roll out the distribution, the use of this drug in the inpatient and the outpatient sector. But if you have really structural changes and changes in therapy routine, it's enormously difficult. That's what I mean with path dependency. Yeah, there are various reasons. For example, remuneration systems, of course, are very strict and regulated, but also, this question of lack of evidence. There is a huge need for special scientific evidence to get something introduced in clinical routine, which has to be established over years or 10, 15 years to get evidence enough for an innovation. And some kind, I think, a tendency of bureaucratic kind of working, which might be typical for Germany. Yeah, and all this hampers getting disruptive innovation in place, I would say. Yeah.
Can I ask a provocative question?
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
I mean, I can't believe I'm asking this question because I'm usually on the other side. I'm talking to artists who have become therapists and trying to see how one can play with the formats of psychotherapy and find different methods. But I'm going to ask, well, isn't the reason for that lack of disruption innovation that ultimately lives are at stake and we don't want to roll out things at scale that might kill people? I mean, that's why I'm just saying, isn't the whole system built in order, this may be naive, but in order to make sure that things that are rolled out are tested thoroughly and we know that I'm putting that as a provocation.
Yeah. But I think in the field of art therapy, there is evidence which is not so bad. I think we heard about this. In the first lecture of Professor Willich, for example, we heard something about the numbers. This evidence is not so bad. If we compare this to the evidence we have for many, many remedies of the older kind we use in Germany, we use quite naturally some ointments against pain in the knee or so. Everybody use it. It's paid by the health insurance companies, but there is no evidence that it works at all. Probably it doesn't harm. That's the reason because why nobody oppones against using this. But I think if you compare it to many other things we do in medicine, art therapy doesn't look so bad.
And maybe I would like to pick up on two terms that have been used now here. That was disruptiveness and that was evidence. And you had a very nice term, Prem, of bumpiness. And I totally relate to that the arts offer a certain bumpiness. They create friction. Holprig. Like a Holprigkeit. No, it's not straight. It's not so fluid. And that's one of the points that I also try to make here with this lecture series, and now you mentioning the questions of evidence, that my thesis, and I've repeated this a couple of times here also, that the science are evidence-based while the arts are inherently non-evidence-based. But that's their power, that's their kind of special power, so that this ambiguity that the arts have, this kind of transgressiveness and disruptiveness that the arts have potentially at least, is exactly the epistemological power of the arts. And that's something that that's why I'm starting this whole session, still don't see. That we are talking about art therapy and there's certain kind of applied practices, but there is even more to it. There's a whole different way of thinking, of a different approach to the world as such, that we find in the artistic versus or complementary to the scientific way of thinking. And that kind of relates to the bumpiness. So isn't that bumpiness in particular needed, or how can we get out of this? It's a tricky situation. I don't know what the expression is, but like, how do we get out of this conflict? Who wants to go first?
I mean, I can go.
I mean, personally, I find myself in the position that I don't think it's either or. It might be a question of a spectrum. For example, I myself, as I said, I do like to see how things work in the real world. For example, when I'm running a certain kind of workshop, or even doing karaoke in classrooms, I see one time after another how it works. I ask people how a certain workshop format functioned and what they took from it. I tweak them and I change them, and that is a kind of evidence. For me, I'm not just doing a thing and then it goes out into the world. And so in that way, I would also say art is also evidence-based. It's just not under the strict parameters that modern-day science may establish. But it's also based on observation. It is, if you're painting something, you are seeing how it works, then you're going back and you're continuing to do it. You're not blindly running forward. And so I think it may just mean that we have to rethink those terms and re-understand how we can still be in the world and observing the world while also able to take risks.
So I think
I love the idea of the spectrum, by the way. I love the idea of the spectrum here. Sorry, Anna, please continue.
No worry. I think I'm not really afraid of this bumpiness, because the bumpiness which comes from art could be an enormous impulse for creating new evidence in medicine or in therapeutic approaches in between somewhere, yeah, as well in music therapy or so. I think the really creative ideas are in this bumpiness. So why not combining it, yeah? So there are probably many ideas in medicine which come originally from very bumpy impulses or ideas from someone, yeah? So this is not for me, it's not really a conflict, yeah? The question is what in medicine or in science is made out of this, yeah? And if we feel that the introduction of new impulses which comes from art cannot be processed in the scientific evidence machine, we have to think about whether we change this evidence generating machine. For example, do we ask the right things to our patients if we want to measure the effects of arts therapy? Or do we have to change our method, our measures, our interview forms or something like that? Do we have to find other alternative ways of measuring?
That's a really nice point, and I'd like to get back to this one for both of your practices. But one more time on the bumpiness. I really like the Holbroich as an image, because it's like I imagine like an object in the street basically that's kind of hindering your path, but that kind of evolutionary speaking, kind of obstacles have always increased like innovation in a way, like a way around it. But what you just said, like the question of are we asking the right question, who's asking a question, what are the questions, etc. Like how do we measure it? And you just said that you also try to get this feedback from people that go enter your exhibitions or whatever the project you're working on. So can we talk about this feedback again and maybe some more examples? Both you from the clinical practice and you from, in particular now I'm interested in the front triennial because it was so much on the topic. But in how far does the reflections of the observers, the participants, kind of, how do you eventually integrate it into your practice again? Talking about ways of measuring it. You need the microphone. I'll pass the mic to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think the best way to answer it, but let me start by saying, I think the essential point of feedback is that you have to take the system as being fluid and flexible. You have to take the feedback in order to change the thing that you do. And that requires the opposite of stagnation, a kind of dynamic quality where you're doing a method, you're evaluating the method, and you're constantly changing it. And I think that in many cases, there's feedback, but it never bubbles up. It never actually changes the way that you do a thing. For front, I mean, it's extremely challenging to get really kind of on the ground, gritty feedback from an exhibition that 100,000 plus people see over 3 cities. There are visitors statistics, there are reviews, of course there are the kind of professional context, but also the ways in which, for example, interestingly, people visited more sites of this front. They on average visited 5 to 6 different sites of the 30, whereas in the first edition of it, they visited 2 or so on average. So those are kind of the numbers, and then on the other hand, there's the talking to people, which is going to be anecdotal. It's not going to be kind of conclusive. It's going to be asking somebody, what did you see? It's going to be going to Abigail DeVille's installation several times, seeing different people there, and chatting with them and finding out what they think about art and what they took away from this. So I don't know that I have an answer, except for the fact that I think it requires an open mind. It requires the ability to actually shift the method itself. I'm also just reminded of the fact that I do think there is a question of like rigor. Like one of the therapeutic modalities that I find very useful, interesting, is cognitive processing therapy, which I don't know how much it's done here in Germany, but a lot of work has been done. It is, okay.
It's, but not so much as we perhaps wish.
I mean, yeah, because it actually has become, as I understand it, the gold standard for the Veterans Administration and for the Army, for people who are dealing with complex post-PTSD from combat or sexual trauma. And it has I have a friend who is an artist turned therapist, clinical psychologist, who actually is a real believer in it as a method. And it's very, very rigorous and structured as a method, and it works in a lot of cases. So I think that we have to find a place where it's not either or. It's not just about, I don't know, we have to find a place where we can accept both rigor in our methods and also an openness to try new methods.
Mm-hmm. So I will give 2 answers. One from the meta level. The ideal way to find adequate measures and to find innovative measures would be that we start with anecdotal evidence, interviewing patients. What did you experience and what happened with you? That's what we call qualitative research. And building on or following the results of this qualitative research, we should construct new quantitative measures, which we then first have to test. We have a new interview, a new scale where we can collect quantitative data. So we have to test it. We find it fine. And then we have to validate it, which means a quality assurance process. And all this together needs 15 years. Yeah. So, but we have to start it. There is no way. I think we have to start it. And this process of doing both or looking in both directions, first the qualitative, then the quantitative measuring, is coming into on the way. And the second point I want to answer from an anecdotal view. Yesterday, I went to the museum because on the first Sunday in the month, it is cost-free in Berlin. And it was really crowded. I went to the surrealistic exhibition. It was really crowded. And there were so many people who didn't know each other before, but stand in front of the pictures, talking, exchanging, and becoming, well, one had the impression they were familiar with each other, although they didn't know each other. And they left the museum, and probably they all were less lonely. They were, in a way, they felt in a way better, but how do you want to measure this?
Yes.
How do you want to measure this? This is really work, and so I thought, but the effect was really amazing. You could see it, you could hear it, and well, but as a researcher, I have no idea at the moment.
But this is a perfect argument for the collective level that you made up that a work can do. Maybe to my final question, and then it's on you guys to kind of think. I already stand up, so you feel more like you're invited to talk. Last question, because you spoke of you mentioned yourself as a campaigner for reform, and you spoke of the stagnation, and you said there maybe is the needs of new methods or novel approaches. So could you kind of fill us in a little bit, like what's on the horizon at least? When we had our kind of conversation a week ago, first kind of chat, we mentioned there was a huge conference, actually at the Charité by the Mind Foundation, Rethink Psychedelics. I don't know, what are the new forms, the new methods that are currently on the horizon, whether they're tested or not, but that I would be curious about. And maybe also from what you have seen, and now you.
Yeah, we spoke about psychedelics, and I researched. I looked a little bit what the results are, and psychedelics are not the game changer. That's clear, but they are helpful in special psychotherapeutic techniques, and they could. Maybe there's an indication of an effect in trauma patients who receive special psychotherapy. So that's all. It's not the game changer, yeah. And I think it doesn't help many patients. What I said, who have many different problems with stress, society, unfulfilled wishes, whatever.
What do you put your money on?
I would put my money on exploring this complementary therapies which do not need this special. I think the classical psychotherapeutic techniques are not for the broad number of patients enough on the eye-to-eye level. There is a academic psychotherapist who is a master in using words and language, and there is a patient who is unexperienced in using language to express difficult perspectives inside. He even doesn't know what it is inside, and now he or she should find words for this. So I think this is the wrong approach. You cannot rely on this for the broad number of patients. And I think non-verbal creative art, non-verbal techniques need to be looked after and need to be developed. I would put money in this. And I would not put any more money in the 20 or in the 35th antipsychotic or in the 47th antidepressant. Yeah?
I think it's a fascinating question. I'm going to give just an example. It was a slide, one of my last slides was a kind of purple room with people lying on the floor. And this was a project that was initiated by Naoko Wasugi in the symposium that Asad Raza and I co-artistic directed called How Can We Gather Now? Now, her 1 hour piece for this symposium involved a gong sound bath with techno, with like kind of ambient techno and plants everywhere, Topo Chico sparkling water, and plant care instructions, while there was also gong work, and she went around with a tuning fork touching people's body parts. It was one of the most wild experience I've ever had. Like, I came out of that hour with something had changed in me. And I don't know what. I mean, we'd have to run some studies, and as you say, there's the problem of the verbalization of it. But I think not only an artist. I don't think artists are special human beings. I think everybody is an artist. But I think that it's that kind of creativity and the allowance of making connections between things that don't seem otherwise connected, as I shared at the end, that we need to embrace.
Now, while I open up, one last question. What's snoezelen?
Oh yeah. What's snoezelen?
Oh, snoezelen. That's snoezelen. Someone from the Netherlands here? Yeah. So snoezelen is the right pronunciation. Okay, it's a mixture coming from relaxation on the one side, and on the other side, being in a room which is especially full of colors and sound and maybe something haptic, curtains or whatever, the floor and so. And you go into this room and enjoy this atmosphere of the designed, architecture is too much, but the designed interior of the room, and you relax. And, well, if you have stress, and if you are anxious, if you are psychotic, and you are anxious, of course, then also you can come down in such a room. It was it's quite old. It was invented in the 70s, I think.
Sounds very 70s.
Sounds very 70s, and up to
now.
It
sounds exactly what you described before.
Yeah, totally.
You're a gong bass. I mean, but so we need more snoezelen, that's for sure. Questions from you guys. You can just say them. I will repeat them for the online audience, or you come to the front and take the mic. I see the first one there and the second one there. Great. Please start.
Yeah, one question.
Oder go ahead.
Hey, okay. Yeah, I was wondering, of course, we got those blockades here in Germany, those bureaucratic writing, testing, and is it effective or not? But I think there's a solution in between when you have your practice with your therapy and you're using music or the singing bowl that I'm working with. That you invite persons that work with the patients in, as a form of snoezelen. You can give them an hour of singing or music, perhaps on a different basis. What do you think of that? It might be possible, I guess.
So the application, if I kind of repeat this for the online audience, of you practice with singing bowls, if I understand that right. And again, I guess sound as a healing practice, and the enlarged understanding even in a snoezelen type of way.
Well, of course, these are approaches which might be quite helpful for the individual patients. And I think not everything is the right way for every patient. Yeah, but the individuality, that's what I think is quite important. The patient has to find out which he or she prefers. And if it has to do with sound and light and coming down, so that's fine. Yeah. And if it has to do something with working on strong or hard material and feel their own strengths, it's okay too. Yeah, I think everything which helps the individual could be easily implemented.
You want to add anything, or should we go to the?
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, actually, I'll go. There was.
Connected to the answer?
Now you're putting me in a tricky position here, because this gentleman now was also jumped over. So we'll interconnect. Yeah, no worries. It all connects. But let's start with the gentleman, and we come to this to you, and then to you, and I'm sure we'll find a pathway.
So I have a question. You describe art as taking place where something has already been, say, broken, or where there is a problem, where there's disease. a lot of diseases? Like there's an-
Beautiful question. I'll try to repeat this for the online audience. So basically, we're looking anterior at a problem. Now we're discussing art as a therapeutic form, but that always says that something is already, quote unquote, broken. So does this tell us that maybe art should be implemented at a much earlier stage? I, by the way, totally agree. And we had this discussion in previous talk here, how important the implementation of artistic education is an early education in particular, to maybe also prevent these things. So if I repeat it correctly, is how, what's your take on the implementation of the arts in a very early education to even avoid? Because at the moment we kind of use the art here in this discussion as reacting to something, quote unquote, ill or broken of sorts.
Do you want to answer?
Well, I can only say I completely agree with the first part. I'm no expert in early childhood education, but you know, I've been reading a great book called Your Brain on Art, which is following a lot of the new neuroaesthetics of the last 20 years, and that seems very borne out. We have here, picking up karaoke requests, Rebecca Rawa, who runs an organization called EFRA, that's also thinking about children and art. I think that connection is essential, and as you say, is kind of prophylactic. In the same way, I will mention that interesting studies show that implementing CPT, cognitive processing therapy methodologies, amongst children also has preventative effects on later traumata and the development of PTSD. Now, the second question or the point was about art as a missing element, and I also really agree with that. One of my favorite books is Barbara Ehrenreich's Dancing in the Streets, A History of Collective Joy. I highly recommend it because it really looks at the origins of modern civilization and the origins of how dance and music have been kind of taken out of particularly European culture through the church and other structural elements. And she points to the fact of pews, fixed seating being introduced into the church in the 12th or 13th century, which was a way to keep people from dancing, because dancing had to be put out into carnival and into spaces where it couldn't be a threat to the hierarchy of the church. You couldn't reach God or ecstasy on your own. You had to do it through somebody. And she has a speculative idea where she is looking at how in the 14th and 15th and 16th centuries in Europe, the idea of melancholy became a big term, something that a lot of people talked about, at the same time that many forms of dance and singing were being banned or outlawed, like through puritanical kind of strands of religion. And she says, I don't have evidence of this, but I wonder if the rise of depression and melancholia is connected to the elimination of these early forms, these natural forms, which, and the treating of those as being evil.
I want to respond to you that indeed there are schools and children daycares that have creative working implemented. But if you look which schools normally private schools, not the public schools, which don't have the money and of course who are under the, unter der Fuchtel, well, in the also very strict and regulated German education system. They don't have the freedom. The teachers don't have the freedom. Yeah, and there is just today, I think, the interview with the famous Berlin teacher who got prizes for his innovative ideas, and he said the curriculum is such strict that the single teacher, if he or she has an idea to change something, is not allowed to do. Yeah, and within this strict system, you cannot implement being creative or going to the museum with your class. Yeah, but I think it's a mistake. Yeah, I think a mistake, and there as well some really major changes have to be done in the school system. Yeah,
fully agree. Yeah, 1 second. You're absolutely where we.
Develop dialogue.
Mwah.
There was a point to follow up.
Okay, so anyways, you get the first answer, so please go ahead. Yeah.
I was wondering, I really liked how you showed all the different types of art therapy, and I'm also a medical doctor, and then I remember patients who really hate going to art therapy, and they just don't find the approach to it. And my question is, do you think art therapy is like good for everybody? They just have to find the right approach?
No, I think...
Sorry, unfortunately the online audience does not hear the question, so that's why it's a bit stupid. I always have to repeat it. But is basically, you're a medical doctor, just said that she had patients that were very reluctant to go to art therapy, and the question was, is art therapy for everyone, or can there be different ways and approaches to it, pathways?
No, it has to be individualized. Patient and therapist have to find out together what might be the best approach for this patient. If he or she hates art therapy, so the question is whether this is simply normal ergo therapy, what is applied, and so what about other forms of literature, photographing? Yeah, there are so many different approaches, and first this has to be found out, eye to eye. Yeah, eye to eye. Not in the when visiting the patient in the patient's room, doctor says, well, I think art therapy, tomorrow you go to art therapy. This is not the right way, I think.
Now you, please. Then you, and then it's you.
Hello. I was a founder, independent experimental platform with development art, people from medicine came and trying to develop their ideas and became famous artists in 2 years. But actually, speaking about treating, if I would be a patient, I would prefer to work with both of you, because each of you spent more than 10 years for your professional, going deep in topics, so it's not possible to separate, or I don't know who a therapist is. Is it magician or it's artist? If it's artist, it's not enough for me. It's magician, it's not enough for me. So maybe it should be kind of prof-orientation. I will try, for example, for me it would be interesting if I'm an artist and it's more routine for me, I'm swimming in art. For me it would be more interesting maybe to speak with scientists and grow up something on my leg or something like that. So, or some genetic chain is a kind of, I don't believe in it. I just think that it is dream and trick, and it could be interesting to go deeper in some topics. So is it should be special art, or maybe it should be called not art therapy, but practice, science, art practice. So we should also make STEAM, not separated, because I don't want to make with doctor and I don't want to make with artist, but with both of you I would be more comfortable, or maybe some more professional people from other fields, if it would be kind of prof-orientation, something like that maybe.
Nice, so the creative or critical coupling, that's a nice one. A couple therapy in a whole different way.
Huh.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, visiting this lecture.
That's
maybe this is what we are trying to
to
inaugurate here.
Co-therapy. Yeah.
Opening up some kind of business.
So Stefan, are you already working on something? So maybe this whole thing is maybe starting first connections of coupling, also of the people that are here. No.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you want to?
Well, I think there are some initiatives of this kind. For example, the open atelier
studio.
The open studios, which are driven by the St. Hedwig Clinic, where doctors who are medical experienced and psychiatry experienced people who are also artists working. Yeah, so there is some kind of bridge, but these are only.
But also, if I would be person who would like to go in, I would prefer to choose, for example, like Munch artist or like style of artist or.
Okay, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here, but I like the direction.
I want just that not like some shit come to me that this artist not make good art, and it's not Modigliani. Why I should work with him if even I'm not artist and he.
So let's say we take this for inspiration, but we give a chance for the other questions. But I really like this coupling idea. Yeah, please.
I mean, I hear you. The question was about being able to choose an artist. And I mean, this is probably a longer question about medical systems and the ways in which one is allowed to choose one's psychotherapist and to what extent, how that works in a system that's highly privatized, like in the US, where since you're paying a lot of it out of, et cetera, et cetera. But the point that I actually want to say that I think is useful is, for example, I believe that as a method, it's often much better to co-facilitate. If you're working with a group, especially a group of above a certain scale, like 12 or 14 people, it's very useful to have two people facilitating, not only because you share the care of the group and the dynamic, but also because it offers multiple perspectives. It's like having, for better or for worse, two parents, or multiple people from which you can kind of actually bounce ideas off of, instead of having a single authoritative voice that claims to know everything.
No, I'm sorry, we have 5 minutes left. No?
It should be like institute. When I choose professor.
It's really nice if we keep this conversation for after. I love your point, but there's a full room and we have 5 minutes left, so we can keep the conversation afterwards. But you had a question, there's 2 more questions, you and the lady in the white jacket, and then we have something special waiting us from Prem. But the karaoke.
Ja, geht an Prem. Also, du hast aufgehört mit der Bemerkung, dass jeder ein Künstler ist. Das ist natürlich Blödsinn. Wenn es wahr wäre oder so, dann würde dieser Satz überhaupt nicht funktionieren. Das zum einen. Und dann wundere ich mich, warum da die Kunst wieder für alles Mögliche verantwortlich gemacht wird, wofür sie nicht verantwortlich ist. Also dieser Begriff der Ästhetik bezieht sich ja auf die Betroffenheit der Wahrnehmung, also das, was die Wahrnehmung betrifft. Mich hat es auch gewundert, dass dieser Begriff überhaupt nicht fiel. Und die Wahrnehmung wird natürlich betroffen gemacht, nicht nur durch visuelle Sachen und akustische Sachen, natürlich auch durch haptische Sachen und so weiter, Gerüche und so weiter und so fort. Und dieses Betroffensein, das hat nicht unbedingt was mit Healing zu tun. Das ist im Gegenteil unter Umständen Verletztsein, aus dem aus sich das entwickelt, oder vielleicht auch der Wunsch zu verletzen. Nur mal so als eine Richtung. Es gibt auch zum Beispiel die Blamage, die da sehr gut funktioniert. Das macht einen besonders betroffen, wenn man sich vor anderen Leuten blamiert.
Try to translate this for the English-speaking audience. A is the question, or the comment that you made. Everyone is an artist that you disagree with. The other one was why are the arts made responsible for so many things? Such now you have to heal as well. If I quote you right. And the other one was that question of perception that has not been discussed. And the last point, there were so many. That there's not only healing arts, but there's also harming arts. Yeah, so maybe some food for thought for you to react.
Tall order.
Tall order. And be quick, because we have one more question and then we have one more extra here.
Thanks, Thomas. Giving me a good one at the end. Yes.
Very good. I like that one. The final question, lady in white.
Maybe it's not good as a final question, but a little bit provoking question, because I'm a medical doctor as well,
Yeah.
and I miss arts in medicine very much, because there's no creativity. I don't know if any of you have been to the hospital. Nobody wants to be there. There's no aesthetics. Everybody's pissed. You don't want to. I mean, you don't have nice interior. You don't have snoodling rooms. Nothing. So if you say art is healing, I mean, if you feel if you say the psychiatry is a little bit the funky business where you have art therapy and stuff. I'm an orthopedic surgeon with no artistic stuff at all. It's just do usual business. There's
No, very good point. That was also, so now I have to repeat this again, but annoying. We have to find another system here. Yeah. Yeah. So where's art in the medical system is the question that was raised from a medical doctor and from the daily clinical experience. It's just simply not there. We have discussed this many times. Professor Willich, 2 rows behind you, showed some examples where this has been done differently. So this question that you raised has been raised many times because often hospital rooms or hospital spaces are not really places where you get well, you know. And I think that's a final remark, final point.
No,
answer.
Nothing to add. You are true.
Wait 1 second. I love your engagement, but we have 2 speakers here, and afterwards we continue us. Yeah.
Nothing to add. You are true. Yeah. In somatic medicine, there is a lack of art. It's in the professions I have shown, in the disciplines I have shown. Yeah. But probably you have it in rehabilitation of orthopedic patients. Yeah. But it would be helpful to have it very much earlier, after wake up from narcosis. Yeah.
Okay, and now, I'll pass the mic, and actually you keep that mic for introducing what you're about to do.
Well,
we're running slightly over time, guys, but it's going to be special. You won't forget it.
No, and I hear you. I'll just say that one of the more interesting projects I had a chance to work on in my, life as a designer was a public hospital in Denmark that was designed by Herzog and Demeron, where they were incorporating a lot of thinking around neuroaesthetics and also artists making interventions within the hospital, making the kind of landscape very accessible to people so that they could have a direct access visually and through walking with the outside. And I wish that I had then, when I did that project 5 years ago or so, known the things I know now, because we probably could have done better graphic design for it then.
Yes. So how do we pick?
No. So I think is that it then? From your side, you should say something.
Yeah, but you are finishing the show, I think. No, okay. So from my side, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our 2 wonderful speakers. And if you're here for the first time and you're curious what has been discussed before, it's all online. So on the website of the University of Arts, you'll find all the previous lectures. And if you're curious about the future program, you find that there too. You can also live stream it. So it's all made available and accessible. So thanks from my side. Big applause to you guys and to our speakers. And now, Prem, how do we go about this? Should I just draw something out of here randomly, or?
I wasn't lying when I said that I believe in karaoke. And so now, just as a little end to this, what we're going to do is I like to start the karaoke off with something that I've never sung before, with the hope that it sets the niveau slightly low. And we have some suggestions here that people gave. Lucas is going to find me a good couple of other songs for us to try out. And I encourage you, even if you hate karaoke, just try it. Just try singing along or sit quietly and we'll figure it out. So let's try the first song. I don't know how many of you know this. I have never sung this before. I did listen to it this afternoon so I could have some sense, but we're just going to try this. We're going to see if this works. Oh no, I don't want to unmeld. Come on. Okay. Oh, that's a really bad version there. We're going to just, let's just, we have to see.
Babyhaut ist so unglaublich weich.
Okay, we've got some ads. Let's Lenore. Let's see how this works. Again, it's a little bumpy. It's always a little holprig. But Reinheit und Pflege, das ist Lenore. Sehr wichtig, das Kind zu schützen durch Lenore. Haben Sie einen schönen Tag. Okay, let's turn it up a little bit. I don't know how it's going to be. Okay, again, I'm hoping you're going to help me out, because Let's try this. Intro. Aren't we gonna get lyrics? Are we not gonna get lyrics or? Oh no. Okay, it's all good. Okay. Remember those walls I built? Well, baby, they're tumbling down. And they didn't even put up a fight. They didn't even make a sound. I found a way to let you win, but I really had a doubt. Standing in the light of your halo, I got my angel now. Feels like I've been awakened. Every rule I had, you break it. I really don't know the song, the risk that I'm taking. I ain't never gonna shut you out. Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can see your halo. You know I'm a saving grace. You're everything I need. Halo, halo, halo. I can see your halo, halo, halo. I can see your halo, halo, halo. I can see your halo, halo, halo. Hit me like a ray of sun, burning through my darkest hour. Think I'm addicted to your flight. This don't even call it falling. Gravity can't forget to pull me back down to the ground. Like I've been awakened. Come on! Every rule I had to break it. The risk that I'm taking, never gonna shut you out. Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can see a halo. It's written all over your face. I can feel your halo, halo, halo. I can see your halo, halo, halo. Woo! 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 Okay, thank you all for trying out that little experiment. Okay, we're gonna do one more from the crowd. Okay. We're gonna jump to the next one for time, and let's see if anybody knows this song.
Sinking.
That's fine.
I tried to reach for you, but you have closed your mind. Whatever happened to our love? I wish I understood. It used to be so nice, it used to be so good.
SOS.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Have a wonderful Monday evening.